I'm divorcing you to marry Ashley. I was shocked when my husband, Mark, declared that. What? I was dumbfounded, and my sister, Ashley, spoke in a sweet voice. Margaret, I'm sorry. We love each other. It was incomprehensible, but apparently true. They wanted to have a wedding, and I was beyond angry. I was just stunned. Feeling ridiculous, I decided to leave home immediately. And then, a few months later, the day of their wedding finally arrived. I took out my mobile phone and tapped the screen. There on the screen was a view of a wedding venue. I saw Ashley in a dress and Mark in a tuxedo. They were looking around nervously. No one had shown up, and they were clearly confused. Watching this scene, I couldn't help but laugh. Let them sweat it out. This wedding itself was my stage for revenge. My name is Margaret, and I'm 52 years old. I've been working in an insurance company's office for a long time. My family consists of my husband, Mark, and my son, Daniel. Daniel recently graduated from college and got a job. He has moved out and now lives alone near his company. Although I felt a bit lonely after raising him, honestly, I was relieved. Now, I can enjoy my life. Travel, hobbies, and such. That was the future I should have had. But our family has a big problem. That problem is Ashley. Ashley is my sister, 10 years younger than me. For various reasons, she still lives with us. Ashley, much younger than me, was spoiled by our parents. As a result, she has a rather selfish personality. Even now, at 42 years old, she hasn't changed a bit. I've been troubled by her actions many times before. But I never imagined she would turn my life upside down like this. The beginning of all this goes back 18 years. At that time, Ashley was 24. I was already married to Mark and busy raising our child. I wasn't particularly close with Ashley, so I only saw her occasionally when I went back to my parents' home. Though she had been selfish as a child, Ashley was now an adult. Surely, she must have matured at least a little bit. However, our parents said she hadn't changed at all. She was living at home, not doing any housework, and constantly complaining to our parents. She hated working, only occasionally doing part-time jobs when she felt like it. I'm worried about her future if she continues like this. I think she'll grow up a bit if she gets married, so we need to find her a husband soon. Isn't it more important for her to start doing housework and working properly? Getting married in her current state. Conversations like this between my mom and me were common. I thought my mom's words were just complaints, but she actually found Ashley a husband. His name was Thomas. He worked for a big company and was the same age as her. He was kind and perfect as a marriage partner. Our parents strongly encouraged Ashley to marry him. As a result, she really did get married. She should have matured after starting her own family. But our parents' hopes were completely shattered. Ashley called me every day with complaints. Listen, Margaret, it was my birthday the other day, right? But Thomas only said happy birthday in the morning. Can you believe that? As usual, I responded lightly to Ashley, who was indignant. So, what about it? It was too late. If he doesn't congratulate me the moment the date changes, it doesn't count. And the necklace he got me was from a brand I don't even like. Can you believe it? That's just being selfish. Ignoring my scolding, she raised her voice even more. No, it's not. It's only natural that my wishes should be fulfilled. Here we go again, I thought, and sighed quietly to myself. This kind of petty complaint about Thomas was Ashley's daily routine. At first, she had called our parents, but her complaints were so frequent that even they got fed up. They started making excuses not to answer her calls, so she began contacting me instead. She thinks the world revolves around her. If things don't go her way, she does nothing but complain and grumble. At first, I listened, but gradually, I started responding half-heartedly. If I kept taking her seriously, I'd wear myself out. Apparently, it wasn't just me and our parents who felt that way. Thomas was exhausted too. Despite not doing much housework and always making excuses, Ashley would insist on getting her favorite foods and brands, making Thomas stand in long lines at famous stores. If he refused, she'd get angry, saying he didn't love her enough. She needed constant praise from Thomas, or she'd sulk and ignore him for days. After enduring this for so long, Thomas finally reached his breaking point. He left divorce papers and walked out. It had only been 6 months since they got married. Ashley was furious at him and ranted intensely. Our parents were frantic, and family meetings were held daily. But I remained calm. This outcome was inevitable. Ashley decided to leave the apartment she shared with Thomas and move back to our parents' house. Back to the old life, I thought. Then, suddenly, tragedy struck. Our parents died in a car accident. They had gone out shopping when they were hit by another car and never came back. Ashley and I were in deep shock. But there was no time to grieve. While still in a daze, we had to handle the funeral and other arrangements. What's this? From a shelf in our parents' house, we found a stack of envelopes. Opening them, we discovered they were debt collection notices. The amount was substantial. I had no idea they had this much debt. What did they spend it on? Upon closer inspection, I saw that several credit cards were maxed out. And there were multiple cards. That's when I remembered our parents' words. They had given Ashley a few cards because she shopped a lot. Ashley, what's the meaning of this? I immediately confronted her, yelling. What? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. What did you spend this money on? When I shoved the notices in her face, she laughed. Clothes, bags, good food, and trips. You can't live without fun, you know. What? Her response was absurd. The cards were in our dad's name, so he must have been paying while he was alive, but there was still a lot left to pay off. I felt dizzy with fear. It's okay, Margaret. You can pay it off, Ashley said cheerfully. No way. Why should I pay for it? Because I don't like working. Come on, Margaret, please. Don't be ridiculous. Why should I pay off her debts? I was trembling with anger, clenching my fists. But somehow, the debt had to be repaid. Ashley seemed unwilling to pay, so I desperately thought about what to do. In the end, I concluded that we had to sell our parents' house. Though not new, the house was in a prime location. We might be able to cover the debt if we sold it. So, we proceeded with the sale, and it fetched a good price. I felt relieved. But only for a moment. Hey, where am I supposed to live? I was planning to move back to our parents' house, but now it's sold. Glancing at Ashley, who was loudly complaining, I said coldly. Go wherever you want. Then maybe I'll live at your place, Margaret. What? She said something outrageous again. I don't have anywhere else to go. It's not like I have a choice. Was she trying to be sweet? I glared at Ashley, who wore a sly smile. Mark and I had recently bought a house. We even made it a 2-family house, thinking about the future. We had enough space for 2 or 3 more people. But living with this selfish Ashley. Just as I was about to refuse, I remembered Mom's words. If anything happens to us, can you take care of Ashley? She's still like a child in many ways, so please. Indeed, she wasn't self-sufficient. The thought of leaving her to fend for herself didn't sit well with me. I sighed. Then, in a weary voice, I said, "Just for a while. Once you find a job and can rent a place of your own, you have to move out." "Yay! I knew I could count on you, Margaret." Her delighted smile irritated me. Reluctantly, I told Mark that Ashley would be living with us for a while. Mark responded nonchalantly. "Ashley, huh? It's sad to be left without a place to go right after a divorce. She can stay with us as long as she needs." "No way. You don't know Ashley at all." I had told him about Ashley's selfishness, but without having a sister, Mark couldn't imagine it. He probably thought her whims were cute. I feared that my life would be turned upside down by Ashley. That fear proved correct. "Hey, are we having fish fry for dinner again? I'm so tired of it," Ashley complained while eating the dinner I made. "Again? It was about a week ago. If you're tired of it, cook for yourself." "I can't cook." "Then don't complain." Ashley laughed. "It's not a complaint, just an opinion." She's been like this ever since she started living with us. She doesn't help with housework, nor does she seem to be looking for a job. She only helps out at a friend's pub twice a week and has no intention of getting a full-time job. Though I appreciated her playing with my young son, Daniel. I couldn't be thankful. Once, she let Daniel get burned by the fireplace when she got distracted by TV. Another time, she ignored Daniel at a shopping center and he got lost. I was growing increasingly frustrated. "Hey, Mark. About Ashley, she still hasn't found a job, doesn't help with housework, and can't even take care of Daniel properly. I want her to leave." I seized the chance to complain to Mark while she was out. But his response was as laid back as ever. "Come on, Ashley is just leaning on you because you're her big sister. Can't you be more understanding? She's polite and kind when she's with me. And some people just aren't good at housework. Maybe you're the one to blame for going back to work full-time so soon after giving birth, leaving no time to take care of Daniel. You're pushing that responsibility onto Ashley." "What are you talking about? I went back to work full-time because of the mortgage and Daniel's education expenses." Mark gave me a cold look as I quickly responded. "You're saying it's because my salary is low, right?" "I didn't say that." It was the same old story. Mark often defended Ashley. She never showed her true colors in front of men, but every conversation led to Mark criticizing my job. He didn't seem to like that I worked full-time. He wanted me to quit my job and stay at home. Our discussions always ended on a sour note. Then one day, an incident occurred. "Hey, Mom. My video game is missing." "What?" Daniel, now in elementary school, spoke to me with tears in his eyes. It was the game I had bought him for his last birthday. I couldn't believe it was already lost. We searched the house, but couldn't find it anywhere. "This is strange. What's going on?" I couldn't believe it, but I looked in the trash can and was shocked. There, discarded, was a receipt. It was from a thrift store and listed the game I had bought for Daniel. Purchase amount, $50. "What is this?" Someone had sold the game. There was only one person in the house who would do such a thing. "Ashley, you sold Daniel's game, didn't you?" "Ah. You caught me already?" I thought she would pretend not to know, but Ashley admitted it right away. "Sorry, I ran out of money this month. But isn't that game popular now? I'm glad it sold for a good price. Thanks a lot." Hearing this, Daniel started crying. I couldn't take it anymore. How could you? Selling a child's belongings without permission is unbelievable. I can't live with someone who does that. Get out now, I shouted in anger. Ashley immediately started whining. You don't have to be so mad. Kicking me out is too harsh. There's no one else I can rely on since Mom and Dad are gone. Tears started flowing from her eyes. Stop it. I didn't care if Ashley ended up on the street. But when she mentioned our parents, I lost my resolve. Mom's words, if anything happens, take care of Ashley, echoed in my mind. After much hesitation, I reluctantly forgave Ashley. We'd have to buy the game back. Feeling exasperated, I told her. Don't ever sell our family's things without permission again. If you do, I won't forgive you. Okay. She seemed unfazed. It was doubtful whether she felt any remorse. This pattern continued for 18 years. There were many conflicts during that time, but Ashley's tears and Mark's defense of her kept things as they were. Meanwhile, Daniel grew up. He graduated from high school and college, got a job, and moved out, but Ashley was still living with us. I was 52, and Ashley was 42. One day, when I came home from work and walked into the living room, I saw Ashley sitting up straight, which was unusual. Next to her was Mark, looking serious. Margaret, come here. We need to talk. Feeling suspicious, I sat down facing Mark and Ashley. Now that Daniel has started his job, I think it's a good time. A good time for what? I couldn't grasp what he was trying to say. What on earth was Mark getting at? Ashley had a sly smile on her face. Mark cleared his throat and declared firmly, I'm divorcing you to marry Ashley. What? The situation was too absurd for me to comprehend. Margaret, I'm sorry. We love each other. Love each other? Are you joking? It's no joke. We've been nurturing our love since Ashley moved in 18 years ago. I was so shocked I thought my eyes would pop out. I couldn't understand what they were saying. Mark blushed and continued. Living together, I realized how charming Ashley is. She's sweet and affectionate, unlike always angry Margaret. Talking about this now makes me blush. Oh. Mark. You're embarrassing me. They looked at each other lovingly. What was I witnessing? But I feel relieved now. I've been wanting to tell you, Margaret. Of course, we're going to have a wedding. You'll bless us, right? It's your sister's happiness. Are you out of your mind? This is insane. Oh, Margaret, you're scary. Ashley clung to Mark, visibly frightened. Mark gently embraced her. I stood up from my chair. If I stayed here any longer, I felt like I would lose it. Filled with anger, I packed my things and left the house without a word. Immediately, I called Daniel. I had to tell him about the twisted truth. Dad and Ashley were nurturing a strange love. Fortunately, Daniel picked up right away. When I explained the situation, he told me to come over so we could talk. I took the train and visited Daniel's apartment where he lived alone. Dad and Ashley? That's insane. Daniel, who welcomed me in, looked disgusted. Of course. He couldn't bless them in such a situation. Exactly, it's so disgusting. I can't believe it. But looking back, there were signs. They used to sneak out together. And Ashley, she stole my video games to sell and even took food from my plate. How could Dad fall for someone like her? Nodding emphatically at Daniel, who had clearly lost respect for Mark, I said. And now they want to have a wedding. It's unbelievable. Daniel interrupted my endless rant. Speaking of the wedding. What he said next shocked me. How many times had I been shocked today? I listened to Daniel's plan, my heart pounding. If the timing is right, we could get revenge on those two. You mean? Daniel smiled a sly smile. When had he started making such expressions? It was a side of Daniel I didn't know, but it showed just how much Ashley had bothered him. I deeply regretted letting someone like her into our home. After that, Daniel and I had several discussions. We decided to put a certain plan into action. I wanted Ashley and Mark to realize their foolishness. That was my intent. Surely, our parents in heaven would understand. Ashley, who had betrayed me after all I had done for her, and Mark, who sided with her. I couldn't forgive them. I was determined to get revenge. I quickly arranged to stay at a hotel. For the time being, I could commute to work from there. Daniel offered to let me stay with him, but I didn't want to impose any further. Besides, the hotel near my office was well equipped and comfortable. It cost money, but as a full-time worker, I had enough savings to manage for a while. Mark had always complained about me working full-time, but in times like these, having money was useful. A few weeks later, Daniel contacted me. Mom, I got a wedding invitation from Dad and Ashley. There's one for you too. They think you're staying with me. Perfect. Daniel, how's our plan? It's all set. Then let's start. I had already sent the divorce papers to Mark, and they were filed. So, I didn't care if Mark and Ashley got married or did whatever they wanted. But sending a wedding invitation after stealing my husband? How brazen could they be? Their nerve was astonishing. I'm sure they were spending their days excitedly planning their wedding. But life doesn't always go as planned. Ashley needed to learn that. Our revenge was ready. I looked forward to the wedding day. Months passed. Finally, the day of their wedding arrived. I put on the chic dress I had bought for this day. Taking the train to the venue, I saw that the relatives were already gathered. After greeting them lightly, I opened the door to the waiting room. There stood Daniel in a tuxedo. Daniel, congratulations on your wedding. Thanks, Mom. Yes, today was Daniel's wedding day. He was marrying his girlfriend from college. Since his company might transfer him in the future, he thought it was a good idea to establish their home base now. The day I rushed to Daniel's place, he shared his thoughts with me. Of course, I had already met Daniel's girlfriend. Her name was Lisa. She was a serious and polite woman, leaving no room for complaint. Lisa is strong. Everything will go smoothly if we follow her lead, Daniel said with a smile, and I welcomed the idea of having such a dependable woman as Daniel's wife. However, talking about this made me realize that my role as a parent was truly coming to an end. Of course, there was a bit of sadness. But the overwhelming feeling was one of joy that he had grown up well. By the way, how are things over there? Oh, over there? Let me check. With that, I took out my mobile phone. Tapping the screen, I saw the scene at a certain wedding venue. There were Ashley in her dress and Mark in his tuxedo. They were looking around frantically. They seemed puzzled that no one had shown up for their wedding. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight. Daniel's wedding and their wedding were on the same day. Of course, at different venues. Their venue was a bit far from here, but I had explained the situation and managed to get a camera set up there. It was connected to my mobile phone so I could see what was happening. Naturally, they had no idea. This was our plan. We arranged for Ashley and Mark's wedding to be on the same day. I had told our relatives everything in advance. They were all outraged by Ashley's outrageous behavior and Mark's foolishness. They agreed to cooperate with our plan. We had sent RSVPs to Ashley's invitations, saying we would attend, but we were all actually here at Daniel's wedding. So there was no way guests would show up at Ashley and Mark's wedding. Of course, we hadn't told their friends, so they might have some people show up. But it turned out that no one did. It must have been because of Ashley and Mark's bad behavior. They didn't have any friends left to invite to their wedding. How about showing me? Daniel peeked at my phone screen. He laughed out loud, just like I did. I turned up the volume to hear what was being said. Mark, no one's here. What's going on? Did you forget to send out the invitations? Of course not. You checked them too, remember? Maybe I wrote the wrong venue on the invitations. Mark was panicking, and Ashley yelled at him. Stop joking. I'm the bride today. I'm supposed to be the most beautiful one here, and no one gets to see me? This is unacceptable. Ashley, in her gaudy dress, was furious. The scene was so absurd that it felt like a comedy. Honestly, who would want to celebrate a wedding for such selfish people? Right, they deserve this punishment. We nodded in agreement. Then, Daniel's wedding began. Lisa, the bride, looked stunning, far more beautiful than Ashley in her dress. And Daniel, who had decided to take on the responsibilities of family life. I was deeply moved by his determined expression, realizing that he was no longer a child. The food was delicious, and the conversations with relatives were lively. I enjoyed the wonderful wedding, forgetting about Ashley and Mark. As the wedding neared its end, it was time to see the guests off. We handed out gifts and took photos with each person. The atmosphere was warm and cheerful. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the lobby. When I looked to see what was happening, I saw a shocking sight. Ashley and Mark had barged in. Both were sweaty and out of breath, and Ashley's dress was dirty, as if she had fallen somewhere. How did they find us? So, this is where you are. Mark's voice startled the relatives. They were briefly confused, but quickly began ignoring Mark and Ashley as if nothing had happened. Just as I had instructed them. I had told everyone beforehand to completely ignore Ashley and Mark if they ever tried to get involved again. I stopped Daniel, who was about to step forward. I couldn't let him deal with this on such an important day. I had to settle this myself. How did you find us? No one showed up, so I thought something was wrong. I figured the invitations might have had the wrong venue, so I called nearby wedding venues. They said there was a wedding here. Mark was red-faced with anger. Ashley glared at me. But her ridiculous appearance made it hard to take her seriously. Her makeup was smudged with sweat, and her dress was so dirty it looked like a rag. Perfect timing. Since everyone is here, we'll just hold our wedding here. What? What are you talking about? Ashley, saying something outrageous, brushed past me and walked towards Daniel and the others. She fixed her eyes on Lisa. Move aside. I'm the main attraction today. With that, Ashley charged at Lisa. What are you doing? Get away, Lisa! The moment I shouted, a tremendous noise echoed around. Ashley was on the floor of the lobby. When I looked at Lisa, she was calmly looking down at Ashley. I've practiced judo since I was a child. Lisa had thrown Ashley with a one-arm shoulder throw. When Daniel said, Lisa is strong, he meant it in more ways than one. While I was thoroughly impressed, Mark rushed to the fallen Ashley. Ashley! Ashley! Get up! Hey, what did you do? That's what I should be asking you, Dad. Daniel defended Lisa and shouted loudly. Mom and I have put up with Ashley for a long time. And now, you're suddenly divorcing Mom and marrying her? I've been disappointed in your poor judgment for a long time. Daniel spat these words at Mark, who shouted back in frustration.
How dare you speak to your parent like that?
I stepped in between them. Have you had enough? Take Ashley and leave.
What did you say?
If people like you are at Daniel's wedding, it's a nuisance. Don't ever get involved with us again. Mark fell silent. Then Ashley, who had just woken up, muttered.
I'm the star here. Everyone look at me.
As she tried to stand up, Lisa spoke with a laugh.
Your underwear is showing. What?
Perhaps from the one-arm shoulder throw, Ashley's dress had torn, and her underwear was completely visible. Even Ashley couldn't bear this.
Don't look at me. Let's go home, Mark, hurry.
Yeah. Ashley was carried out by Mark. First she says to look at her, then not to. Make up your mind. Lisa and Daniel laughed at my words. For now, the storm had passed. Ashley and Mark had been humiliated in front of everyone. Hopefully, this would teach them a lesson and make them better people. But their misfortune didn't end there. Mark's company went through a downturn and started laying off employees. He received some severance pay, but it was mostly consumed by the debt accumulated from Ashley's spending. During the 18 years they lived with us, Ashley had secretly taken money from him. Considering she had even sold Daniel's video games, she must have been desperate for money, but I never imagined she had piled up such debt again. Mark urgently looked for a new job. However, being over 50 with no particular skills, it was tough. Days passed without any job offers, and money kept flowing out. Originally, they planned to use the severance pay to finish paying off their mortgage, but that was no longer possible, so they had to sell their house. They ended up living in a motel. Now, Mark was working a part-time job. Ashley had lost her job when the pub she worked at closed. Having never worked properly before, Ashley was unlikely to start now. She would continue to live by leeching off others. And her target had become Mark. Once, while walking around town, I saw them. Ashley and Mark were scavenging discarded food behind a supermarket. They looked emaciated from not eating properly.
I want steak. Do something, Mark.
I'm sorry, but all I can get is this. Mark handed over expired bread from the discard cart.
I've fed up with this life.
Ashley cried out. But she couldn't leave Mark, who was supporting her. At this point, they would fall into ruin together. Watching this, I felt a pang of pity and walked away. It was a cruel ending, but inevitable. There was nothing more I could do than to stay away from them. As for me, my years of service were recognized, and I was promoted to manager. I left the hotel and rented a spacious apartment. With this space, Daniel and his family could visit without feeling cramped. Later, Daniel and Lisa had a baby girl. Visiting my granddaughter has become my recent joy.
That one-arm shoulder throw was impressive, Lisa.
Lisa blushed and smiled. Margaret, please forget about it. It's embarrassing.
But this little one has your blood, so she'll be strong too. She has a big appetite,
he said happily while playing with the baby.
That's good. Health is the most important thing.
We chatted about many trivial things. I was amazed at how peaceful life was without Ashley. Although my plans had changed a bit, my life was still ahead of me. I wanted to continue enjoying each day. Something feels off. I try to pinch my cheeks to ward off the sudden wave of sleepiness, but it's utterly ineffective. There wasn't anything particularly exhausting about today, just a meal at my in-laws. And I'm not usually short on sleep. Why then, I wonder drowsily when I hear my husband's laughter.
Good night, LOL. I'll make sure you have sweet dreams.
My name is Lila. A 24-year-old office worker, newly married to Riley, who is 5 years my senior. We met through a friend and, after dating for 2 years, were happily married. We had a grand wedding recently and received blessings from many people. Just as I was dreaming about our happy married life ahead, an unexpected misfortune struck. Emerson, my mother-in-law, suddenly fell ill and passed away in no time. Emerson was cheerful and very kind, delighted when I first went to greet her.
Nice to meet you, I'm Lila. Oh, what a joy to have such a lovely woman as my son's wife. I've always dreamed of having tea time with my son's wife. I'd be delighted. Please, let's have tea time together.
Though I was nervous, Emerson welcomed me with a full smile, making me feel at ease and fond of her. We had planned to have tea time together after the wedding settled down, but that dream was shattered with Emerson's passing. We were busy with Emerson's funeral, sorting out her belongings, and handling the inheritance, finally settling down a year later. Then, I got a call from Trevor, my father-in-law.
Layla, how about a meal at our house next weekend night? I'm thinking of ordering takeout. Yes, of course. Thank you.
So, I was invited to dine with Trevor next weekend night, along with Riley. Trevor ordered Singaporean cuisine, which he loves, and we enjoyed the feast. The three of us gathered around the dining table. It was my first time trying Singaporean cuisine, and everything was delicious. Except, the soup tasted oddly. Curious, I asked my husband.
Hey Riley, doesn't this soup taste a bit strange? That's just how this dish is. You're not used to Singaporean cuisine, haha.
Though Riley laughed it off, I couldn't stomach the soup, so I avoided it and ate the other dishes. Then, I felt Trevor's sharp gaze.
Lila, I went through the trouble of ordering this, so make sure you drink the soup.
Startled by Trevor's outburst, I hurriedly gulped down the soup. It still tasted weird. The strange taste spread throughout my mouth, and I tried to cleanse my palate with water and other dishes. Gradually, my vision blurred, and I found myself slumping over the table. What's happening? I'm incredibly sleepy. This isn't good. I'll really fall asleep. I need to stay awake. As my consciousness faded, I could hear Riley's laughter. It seems to have worked. Dad, is that thing ready? Of course, it's all set. It's in the dresser drawer in the bedroom. The new ones are amazing, only 0.01 millimeters thick. We didn't have those when I was young. Realizing Riley and Trevor were discussing contraceptives, I felt a sense of danger but then lost consciousness completely. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. What happened? I murmured groggily.
Oh, thank goodness. You're awake.
Looking towards the voice, there was our neighbor, Luella. Luella immediately called the doctor, who explained that I had been given a large dose of sleeping pills.
Sleeping pills? So that's why the soup tasted so odd.
Then, I learned from Luella. Your dad and husband ran off in the car, so I accompanied you in the ambulance. I'm so glad you woke up safely. Really? Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the trouble. But, what do you mean Dad and my husband fled in a car? Actually, Luella found out that the fire alarm was ringing at my in-laws' house and it wouldn't stop, so she decided to check on them. When she rang the doorbell, Trevor came out. Yes.
What's going on, ringing the fire alarm like this? It's been going off for so long. Haven't you found the source yet? This is serious. I'm coming in. Please, it's okay. Don't come into the house.
What are you talking about? We're supposed to help each other out in times of need. Luella said that, barging into the house, and found me lying listlessly in the living room.
Oh my! You've collapsed from inhaling smoke. This is terrible. I need to call an ambulance right away. No, this is different.
Trevor and my husband tried to deny it hastily, but Luella was convinced I had collapsed from smoke inhalation and called for emergency and fire services on the spot.
Lila is just sleeping.
That's right. My wife is just tired and sleeping. There's nothing to worry about. Despite their desperate explanations, Luella objected.
It's strange that she won't wake up with such a loud noise going on. I'm worried. I wonder if the ambulance will arrive soon.
Luella was frantic. Before we knew it, people had started gathering. Riley and Trevor began to sweat profusely. Soon after, Riley and Trevor hurriedly jumped into a car and fled, leaving me behind. That's why Luella ended up accompanying me in the ambulance. Such a thing. Thank you so much. I expressed my gratitude to Luella. Then, when I told the doctor about the conversation I heard between Riley and Trevor before losing consciousness, he grimaced and made a call, and I was informed that Riley and Trevor were also admitted to the same hospital.
Riley and Dad are hospitalized. Why?
Apparently, after fleeing the house in the car, Riley and Trevor were driving frantically to get as far away as possible. As a result, the car Riley was driving crashed into the wall of a mansion, causing an accident. Both were brought to this hospital by ambulance, severely injured with broken bones, but their lives were not in danger. Hearing the reason for their admission, I was overwhelmed with anger, disgust, and various other emotions.
They got what they deserved. I'll never forgive them.
I decided to hire a lawyer and sue over this incident. Then, sleeping pills were detected in the soup bowl I had finished, and Riley and Trevor were arrested for assault. The news even reported on the incident. Later, during the police investigation, they were rearrested for attempted rape. Trevor was stressed from being busy with Emerson's funeral and other matters, becoming frustrated. He was planning to visit a nightclub, but when Riley found out, he made a proposition to Trevor.
Dad, if you're that frustrated, I can lend you Lila. But in return, give me Mom's kimonos. Really? I'd be thrilled to be with young Lila, but... Why Mom's kimonos? Are you running out of money? Yeah, I kinda blew through my savings.
Riley had squandered his savings on gambling and offered me in exchange for Emerson's kimonos, which came from a distinguished family and were valuable. Riley knew this and proposed the trade to Trevor.
Lila doesn't know I'm hooked on gambling. I've used quite a bit from our joint savings account, so I want to cover it up before she finds out. I see. But I can't imagine Lila agreeing to be with me. That's okay. I have a good idea. You still have some of Mom's sleeping pills, right?
Emerson had been prescribed sleeping pills for her insomnia before she passed away. With those sleeping pills remaining, Riley and Trevor concocted their plan. They decided to dissolve powdered sleeping pills in the soup and proceed after I had fallen asleep.
Perfect plan, right? This way I get money, and Dad's frustration is relieved. It's all good.
Right. Let's invite Lila over for a dinner party next weekend. However, their scheme was abruptly foiled by the ringing of the fire alarm, leading to the foolish outcome of causing an accident in their haste to flee in the car. It turns out Riley and Trevor are hospitalized in the same room.
Damn it! How did it come to this? It was supposed to be a perfect plan.
If only the fire alarm hadn't gone off. In the end, we couldn't do anything with Lila and ended up getting seriously injured. What a mess.
Damn it!
As they openly wept and voiced their grievances, a nurse visiting their room informed them with displeasure. I had demanded compensation through a lawyer in the divorce proceedings, but both of them flatly refused to pay any settlement for the divorce.
To demand compensation from me, her husband, in a divorce trial. Nothing actually happened, so it should be fine. That's right! In the end, all we did was give Lila sleeping pills and nothing else.
Both their reasoning left me and my lawyer utterly dumbfounded. Even when told that administering sleeping pills without consent is unacceptable, they wouldn't listen at all. Moreover,
Hey, Lila, tell the police not to sue me and Dad. If the victim asks for a non-prosecution, the police won't sue, right?
they had the audacity to command. How low could they possibly be? I continued to ignore them, but they persistently demanded not to sue and to ask for a lighter sentence. However, their demands suddenly stopped at one point. After giving orders every day, it was strange for them to suddenly cease. Curious, I decided to investigate. It turns out they had encountered a serious problem. The owner of the mansion whose wall was destroyed when Riley and Trevor crashed into it was furious and had demanded they pay for the repairs. The damage was extensive, so the cost of repairs was significant. Moreover, my husband had lied, saying, "We were rushing to the hospital because Dad was suffering from an illness, and that led to the driving mistake." However, the incident was reported in the news. Upon learning the truth, the mansion owner became even more enraged and insisted on receiving both the repair costs and compensation from the divorce trial. As a result, Riley and Trevor seemed to have bigger problems than just dealing with me. "It wasn't on purpose. Please forgive us. We beg you." Riley and Trevor were pleading, but the mansion owner was unforgiving. They were told they must pay no matter what. Since the mansion owner hired a lawyer, Riley and Trevor also had to hire one to handle the situation. Since I had a lawyer as well, the compensation for the divorce was smoothly negotiated between the lawyers. Given their clear wrongdoing, our demands were almost fully met. I also demanded and received the money Riley had misappropriated from our joint savings account. Although I hadn't noticed his gambling addiction, I remembered how his overtime had suddenly increased at one point. Probably, he was lying about working late and going to pachinko instead. And so, I naturally proceeded with the divorce from Riley. The negotiations were handled by our lawyers, and though initially reluctant, Riley agreed to the divorce when I firmly insisted. Riley's lawyer played a significant role by convincing them that they were in a very unfavorable position and needed to show sincerity. Later, I went to thank our neighbor Luella again. "Thank you so much. I don't know how to express my gratitude."
Oh, I didn't do anything special. It's good that you're safe. Perhaps Emerson was looking out for you.
"Emerson, you say? What do you mean?" After I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, the firefighters came and checked the cause of the fire alarm. However, the only source of fire in the house was a candle on Emerson's altar, which no one should have lit. This wasn't enough to trigger the fire alarm, indicating a possible malfunction as there were no other signs of fire.
Maybe Emerson is always watching over you? She was so happy to have such a lovely daughter-in-law.
Luella told me with a smile. It might have been a coincidence, but even so, I felt a warmth thinking about Emerson's kind smile. After expressing my thanks to Luella again, I headed to a certain cake shop. This shop sells a chocolate cake that I've always loved. When I had promised to have tea time with Emerson, I wanted her to try the chocolate from this cake shop. After buying sweet buns, I went to the florist to buy flowers that matched Emerson's cheerful image, with a fresh impression, and headed to visit her grave. Offering the flowers and chocolate at the grave, I expressed my gratitude to Emerson.
Dear Emerson, thank you so much. Your help saved me. Though I've divorced Riley, I will always love you, Mom.
I wished I could have talked more with Emerson. I wanted to have that tea party.
This chocolate was meant to be shared with you, Emerson, during our tea time. It's really delicious.
Just then, the wind blew softly. Feeling as if Emerson had responded, a tear fell from my eye. But thinking that crying would worry Emerson, I lifted my face, smiled, and said,
I'll visit again, Emerson.
And moved on. I decided to take the chocolate back with me later, as I couldn't leave it at the grave. On the way home, I felt incredibly refreshed. Despite everything, I vowed to live energetically from tomorrow on. Returning to single life, I threw myself into work more than ever before. Riley and Trevor, with their complex fractures, seem to still be in the hospital. The owner of the mansion is trying to collect the repair costs before they are discharged and sent to prison, and it seems they had to sell their car and belongings to pay back the money using their savings. Physically and mentally devastated, and with prison time awaiting them. They are experiencing a living hell. I hope they reflect deeply and pay for their crimes once they are discharged and sent to prison. Since then, I've been visiting Emerson's grave regularly, updating her on my life. Having had enough of love for a while, I've decided to enjoy being single and am studying hard to earn new qualifications. I plan to live every day without regrets. My husband called me disgusting for my severe morning sickness, looking down on me with cold eyes. "You're the one who threw up and made a mess, right? Hurry up and open the window to air it out. If the smell sticks, you're paying for it. Just because you find it hard to go shopping or cook doesn't mean morning sickness isn't an illness. Don't be so stupid." On top of that, as my morning sickness got worse, my husband left me at home and went on an overseas trip with mother-in-law, Audrina. That was the last straw for me, and I began to plot my revenge. A week later, my husband called, furious. I laughed it off. "Since you told me to clean the house, I did just as you said. Got a problem with that?" I'm Kimberly, a 28-year-old office worker. My husband, Eamon, and I live in a detached house and both work while we've recently become pregnant. While I was happy, my morning sickness was so severe that I couldn't go to work on some days. Fortunately, many at my workplace were understanding.
"Once you get through this, it'll get easier, so make sure to rest and take care of yourself."
They gave me some time off when I was considering quitting. So, I spent my days at home, resting as much as possible, eating when I could, and doing household chores. The problem was my husband. He practically stopped doing any housework at all. "You're always at home, right? Even a pregnant woman can clean, so at least do that." While my husband used to do household chores when we were both working, he stopped doing anything since I took my leave. Even when I said I couldn't do it because of severe nausea, he wouldn't listen. Moreover, he compared me to other pregnant women he had seen, saying, "Just being lazy and slacking off in the name of morning sickness." Furthermore, he was extremely averse to me vomiting. The first time I vomited at home, I didn't make it to the toilet and ended up using the living room trash can. Seeing this, my husband, pinching his nose, hurried me to ventilate the room and kept yelling at me, even though my nausea hadn't subsided. Although I vomited into a plastic bag in the trash can, so the can itself wasn't dirty, he made me dispose of the bag and then threw the trash can away.
"Hey, what's with that attitude? Why are you telling me to open a window when I'm vomiting? You could open it yourself. And I properly sealed the double bag before throwing it away, so why throw out the trash can in front of me as if to make a point?"
Disgusting, smelly, don't talk.
Even if it's in a plastic bag, droplets might have gotten on the trash can.
After that, no matter what I said, "Don't talk because it's smelly," he wouldn't even listen. I started to consider divorce. Maybe once my morning sickness settled down and I could go back to work, my husband would return to being the kind and helpful person he used to be. But could a husband who hurled such abuse at me while I was suffering return to how he was? Or was this his true nature? As I worried, my morning sickness only got worse. With nausea hitting me multiple times a day, I started carrying a plastic bag with me everywhere in the house to vomit without my husband seeing and dispose of it. However, one time, I didn't manage to dispose of it in time, and he saw me with the bag. "Don't touch anything, all right? You're paying for the sofa you just sat on since you're going to dispose of it because you dirted it." He looked at me with utter disgust. When I impulsively brought up divorce, I noticed he was holding a pamphlet in his hand. He spread it out to show me.
In about 2 weeks, I'm going on a trip overseas with Mom. We plan to stay for about a week. Don't slack off on cleaning just because I'm not here. Keep the house clean. What? What are you thinking?
While looking at me coldly, my husband laughed in a low voice.
I don't want to stay in a house you've made filthy. The morning sickness should settle down in about 3 weeks, right? By the time I'm back from the trip, it should be nearly over, so clean the house in the meantime.
Fine.
I'll give the house a thorough cleaning.
The next 2 weeks were tough for me. He doubled down on doing nothing, even eating strongly scented meals or spraying harsh perfume around the room despite my pleas because it made me nauseous. Despite locking me in the bathroom, he'd bang on the door furiously and yell if he wanted to use it himself. This lifestyle continued. I immediately informed my parents that I had decided on divorce. Since my husband's attitude changed, I had been discussing it with my parents, who must have realized from my words that convincing me otherwise was no longer possible. They told me to come back home immediately. However, just divorcing and returning to my parents' home wasn't enough for me. I was determined to teach my husband, who lacked any awareness of being a father and thought nothing of the individual differences in pregnancy and morning sickness, a lesson. 2 weeks later, I saw my husband off with a large carry-on bag. These 2 weeks were the peak of my morning sickness, and I had lost more than 2 kilos. If it continued like this, I would end up hospitalized due to severe pregnancy sickness. Seeing me visibly thinner, my husband still called me dirty and, after repeatedly ordering me to clean the house, fled like he was escaping. I stayed at the entrance until he was out of sight, then took a deep breath and made a phone call. A week later, I was leisurely sitting in my parents' living room when calls from my husband kept coming in. Calls from my husband kept coming in one after another. After watching for a while, my parents started to panic, so I reluctantly answered.
Don't mess with me. What the hell is this? Explain.
I instinctively moved my smartphone away from my ear at the sound of my husband's loud voice the moment the call connected. Still, I sighed at the loud enough voice and listened to him.
I can't get into the house. What's going on? Don't change the locks on me while I'm away. The real estate agent changed them. It's kind of gross to have the same keys as the previous tenant for the next one, right? So, they changed the locks when selling the house. Huh? Real estate agent? Oh, didn't you see the sign? It's right there next to it, for sale.
There was silence on the phone for a while before the angry voice came again.
What are you doing on your own? Who gave you permission to sell it? Why are you selling it? You said the whole house smells. So, I cleaned the entire house, including that. And why would I need anyone's permission to sell my house? Your house. That's not right. That house belongs to your grandfather. It's a crime to sell it without being the title holder. That house was given to me, I remodeled it, and it's in my name. You can't just sell it if you're not the title holder.
Indeed, the house we lived in belonged to my grandfather. However, after my grandfather passed away, I, still single, remodeled it into its current form, and after getting married, my husband moved in to live together. My husband was momentarily speechless knowing the title was in my name, but quickly changed his approach.
That house is where I live too. You can't just kick out a resident like that. It's illegal to sell my stuff. Besides, it was our house since we lived there as a couple, so it's not just your house anymore. Unfortunately, that house was in my name before we got married. We never changed it to a joint title after marriage. Plus, I moved all the stuff out after, so your things are all safe. I did dispose of the sofa you said was smelly, though.
My husband seemed panicked by the mention of moving out his belongings. He was asking where and when.
It's at your grandmother's house. After all, you're away with Dad gone and no siblings.
There was nowhere else to send it but your grandmother's when you went overseas with Audrina. Hearing his belongings were at his kind grandmother's house seemed to calm my husband for a moment, but his voice quickly filled with anger again.
So, you're the kind of woman who sells the house and dumps the belongings while her husband is on a trip. I'm divorcing you. I'll sue for compensation in the divorce court because of this.
It's a relief you're the one bringing up divorce. I don't want you to come to the house anymore, and I'll be heading there with my lawyer soon. So, goodbye. I wonder if my husband truly believed he could win if he took it to court. I calmed my panicking parents while contacting a lawyer. A week later, when I went to what my husband calls his in-laws' house, Audrina slapped me before I even entered the door. I had expected it and deliberately received the slap.
Because of you, the house is a mess. A woman who can't even do housework because of a little morning sickness is useless. Pay the compensation in the divorce court and let's divorce.
As I was rubbing my stinging cheek, planning to retort to Audrina, she saw someone behind me and her face twisted. I thought you showed no remorse, but to strike immediately upon meeting is something else. Behind me was Carol, my husband's grandmother, looking furious. Hello. I'm really sorry for sending the belongings over so suddenly the other day. That's all right. If it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have noticed at all. I had come to the in-laws' house, which was now the home of my husband's grandmother who had kindly accepted his belongings. When I sent my husband's belongings, I included a letter of apology detailing everything about our situation. As a result, the grandmother was furious with her grandson's husband for hurling terrible words at his wife suffering from morning sickness and leaving her to fend for herself. She was equally furious at Audrina for going on an overseas trip with him without admonishing such behavior. The grandmother, now 80 years old, is a gentle figure to her grandson but a disagreeable mother-in-law to Audrina. Since Audrina married into the family, her relationship with the grandmother, due to their clashing personalities, has always been like cats and dogs. Sure enough, Audrina, upon suddenly facing the grandmother, twisted her face in obvious annoyance, which only fueled the grandmother's anger further. After briefly addressing the shouting match between the two, I entered the house. There, my husband stood, dumbfounded next to the grandmother and Audrina. It might have been shocking for my husband to see his kind grandmother and mother arguing so fiercely. However, wanting to discuss matters with my husband without Audrina's interference, I had informed the grandmother of my visit in advance. And we started the divorce negotiation with my lawyer before Audrina could return. The process didn't take much time and ended smoothly. The compensation amount my husband had prepared for the divorce court and its basis were systematically dismantled by my lawyer, leaving him speechless. After a thorough division of assets and agreeing not to approach me except when visiting our child after its birth, my husband readily agreed, and our marriage ended abruptly. As I was leaving the house, the grandmother and Audrina were still standing next to each other. I addressed them briefly before departing, but they seemed too heated in their argument to pay me any mind. Subsequently, I began receiving a barrage of complaint-like emails from my ex-husband. Apparently, he became annoyed with the grandmother coming to the in-laws' house and meddling. Imagining my former husband and Audrina, who had shouted at me so boldly, becoming meek in front of a petite grandmother, finally brought me to laughter. However, the nature of my ex-husband's emails soon shifted towards seeking reconciliation. Every day there's shouting. They both ask me what I think when they're fighting, dragging me into it, and it's annoying. It's a lifetime request. Please, let me stay at your place. I'll do household chores or anything. I won't do anything terrible again, and I'll never say it. I want to meet our coming child too. I love you. I want to remarry you. I responded mechanically. I will not reconcile. As for the child, you can meet if you pay child support. And left it at that. Eventually, the messages from my ex-husband ceased. Apparently, unable to bear the living conditions, he left Audrina and went somewhere. Not providing any support, Audrina, not yet of pensionable age, is scraping by on her savings. Audrina herself contacted me with this news. "No one's helping me. Please, I want to stay at your place. I only went on the trip with my son because he invited me. I had no idea you were suffering so much from morning sickness," she claimed, lining up convenient excuses over the phone, but when I threatened to report her to the police, the calls stopped. Apparently, the grandmother also refused to help, and Audrina, limited by her savings, began working part-time. Thus, she no longer had the energy to call or email me. However, the altercation between the grandmother and Audrina that day is well known throughout the neighborhood, and they saw me deliberately receiving Audrina's slap. Consequently, the neighbors have distanced themselves from Audrina, leaving her to live uncomfortably in her home. Seemingly unable to afford renting a new apartment, she spends her days diminishing in stature. Yet, living alone in a rent-free house should be manageable on a part-time income. My morning sickness has finally subsided, and I no longer vomit. The doctor, learning of my divorce and the circumstances around it, scolded me for accumulating too much stress, which wouldn't help in healing. Though I had been consulting with my family, the stress from living with an uncooperative ex-husband for a while, and dealing with real estate agents online to sell the house, had been too much on my body, and I reflected on this. Moving forward, I plan to avoid stress and return to work. Anyway, I'll be taking maternity leave before giving birth, planning to live at my parents' house. Now, imagining the appearance of my unborn child brings me immense joy. As the days go by, my anticipation grows, and I can hardly wait to see what kind of child will be born. No matter what, I intend to raise my child with love.
The crying kids and the wife who doesn't do housework are just in the way.
Upon returning home from visiting her parents, Emery was greeted by these unbelievable harsh words from her brother-in-law, Mark. To make matters worse, Mark left Emery and her child behind at our house and went back alone. The worst. Was Mark always hiding his true nature? The action I took, shaking with anger. My name is Violet. I retired last year after working for many years. I have a daughter named Emery. When Emery was 5 years old, her father fell ill and passed away. Since then, I've raised Emery with all my love, by myself. Emery has always been a kind child. She sometimes felt lonely without her father, but grew up to be a bright and honest good child. At the age of 25, Emery married a man named Mark and became a housewife. Emery and her family live in an apartment an hour away by train from my house. One day, I received a call from Emery.
"Mom, I'm pregnant."
I was overjoyed to hear about Emery's pregnancy.
"That's wonderful. How are you feeling? If there's anything I can do, just let me know. Congratulations,"
I said, offering my blessings. Imagining a bright future, I even started thinking about passing on my house to Emery and her family someday. Hoping for the health of both mother and child, I spent my days looking forward to the birth of a healthy baby boy. Emery decided to come back home for about a month with her son after giving birth, and I did everything I could to support Emery so she could rest a bit. Bathing, changing diapers, feeding milk. Taking care of a baby after so long was challenging but fulfilling, and most importantly, my grandson was so adorable that I was motivated to do anything. Emery tried to do as much as she could on her own, but I always told her not to overdo it postpartum. Thinking of Emery's health, I prepared nutritious meals.
"Mom, thank you so much. This really helps,"
Emery would always say, expressing her gratitude. I was enjoying life with Emery and my grandson, but one thing bothered me. Emery's husband, Mark, hardly ever came to our house. I thought it was normal for a husband to come and see his wife and child. 2 weeks later, Mark finally came to our house. However, he barely exchanged a few words with Emery and didn't even bother to look at the baby sleeping in the crib on his own. Emery picked up the baby to show him, but Mark showed little interest. I suggested to Mark,
"Why don't you stay over tonight?"
But Mark declined, saying, "No, I'm busy with work, so I'll pass," and left soon after. I felt uneasy about Mark's indifferent behavior, showing no affection for the baby or consideration for Emery, but I continued to support Emery and take care of my grandchild with dedication. After that, Mark never showed his face again. A month flew by, and it was time for Emery and my grandson to return home. Feeling lonely again, I hoped the family of 3 would support each other. Even though Mark had a lukewarm response when he visited, living with the baby might gradually nurture his paternal instincts. Maybe he only came once because he was really busy with work. Convincing myself of this, I hoped for Emery's happiness. But a week later, when I noticed noise at the front door, I found Emery, my grandson, and Mark. Emery looked pale and worn out. Mark was saying to Emery,
"The crying kid and you, not doing housework, are both in the way. Stay at your parents' house for a while."
I was shocked into silence. Noticing me, Mark lazily said, "Violet, please take care of the kid for a while. I'm leaving Emery here too." Violet, please take care of the kid for a while. I'm leaving Emery here too." And tried to leave. I was about to yell at Mark, but held back when I saw Emery tightly holding the baby. "Yes, that's fine." My voice was strained, but Mark, seemingly indifferent, said, "I'll come to pick them up eventually," and left without a second glance at Emery or the baby. After inviting Emery and the baby inside and asking what happened, Emery suddenly started crying. Comforting her, I was stunned by what she finally managed to say. "Mom, Mark says he's bothered by me and the baby." Upon asking for details, it turned out Mark would rage about the baby's crying and his inability to work from home. Mark's company allows him to work from home a couple of days a week. He also berated Emery, believing extreme articles online about perfect parenting and housekeeping during maternity, or unrealistic knowledge about pregnancy and childbirth.
"Why is the house such a mess? There are dishes piling up. Don't use childcare as an excuse for your laziness."
He criticized Emery for neglecting housework due to childcare, despite not helping at all. Finally, he left Emery and the baby at our doorstep, saying,
"The crying kid and the wife who doesn't do housework are just in the way. Take care of them at your parents' house for a while,"
and went back alone. After hearing Emery's story, I felt a surge of anger and immediately contacted Mark's parents. When I told them about Mark's treatment of Emery, they said, "Well, but please understand Mark's feelings. It's unpleasant if a house is messy." I was speechless with astonishment. They even said, "We wish Emery would be more considerate of Mark." To which I calmly replied, "It's ridiculous to put all the burden on Emery without helping with childcare or housework." I continued to lecture them. Eventually, Mark's parents seemed to understand what I was saying. When I called Mark himself and lectured him,
"You're always complaining to Emery, but have you ever changed the baby's diaper or fed him milk even once? As a married couple, you need to cooperate."
Mark wouldn't listen. Instead, he said,
"Speaking of which, Violet, you mentioned before about giving us your house. When will that be?"
Completely ignoring Emery and the baby to inquire about the house. He said in a frivolous tone, "Our current apartment is too small, so I really want to move into your larger house soon." Aghast, I replied, "I'll hand it over once you come to properly take Emery and the baby and can live together as a family," and hung up the phone. Was Mark always like this? I feel so sorry for Emery. Mark seemed like a perfect gentleman during family meetings, but I'm shocked he was hiding his true nature. Emery must have only seen the good in Mark when deciding to marry him. It's no exaggeration to say she was deceived. For now, I must protect them until Mark properly comes to pick them up. And so, our life together, with me, Emery, and my grandson, began. Emery gradually regained her spirits, and my grandson grew up healthily. 7 months later, when Mark finally came to pick them up, he was stunned to see our house.
What the? Why is everything gone?
The site was cleared. In a panic, Mark called Emery.
On the phone, Mark yelled, "Hey! Why is the house gone? What happened to the promise of giving us the house? And where are you guys now?"
To this, Emery calmly demanded a divorce, saying,
"You finally showed up? It's too late. The child, Mom, and I have moved. Let's get a divorce."
Actually, since Mark didn't come to pick them up for a long time, I sold the house and cleared the land. If he had come sooner and sincerely apologized to Emery, things might have been different, but since there was no sign of that, I decided to sell the property. By then, Emery had already resolved to divorce Mark. I hadn't expected him to come after 7 months. During this time, we managed to find a strong lawyer for the divorce and a new place to live with the money from the sale of the house, so maybe the timing was right in a way. But it was way too late. What did he think of Emery and our grandson? Mark screamed.
"Divorce? Why would it come to that? I will never agree to it. Tell me where you've moved to, I'll come."
But Emery responded,
"I will never tell you. I'll send the divorce papers by mail, please sign them,"
and hung up the phone. We didn't move to a neighboring city but to a distant one, buying a spacious apartment with the money from the house sale. With a large park nearby and supermarkets and drugstores within walking distance, it's a great location for raising a child. Emery and I are completely satisfied with our new apartment, enjoying a relaxed life of parenting. Mark often called afterward, only saying,
"I will never agree to a divorce."
Emery reiterated her request for a divorce, saying,
"If you could ignore us for 7 months, we must not be needed. Please come to terms with it and agree to the divorce."
But Mark threatened,
"Do you plan on taking away my parents' first grandchild?"
However, Emery informed him,
"Your parents have been visiting regularly, so they're well aware of the child's growth."
Actually, after I lectured them over the phone, Mark's parents changed their minds, apologized to us, and even came to our doorstep to offer a deep apology for their rudeness. They repeatedly tried to persuade Mark to pick up Emery and the child, but he refused to listen. They disowned Mark, saying,
"A person like that is no son of ours,"
and urged him to agree to the divorce quickly. Mark panicked.
"Why are you suddenly saying this? Dad, Mom, that's terrible."
They cut him off.
"You had 7 months. We're severing ties with you as parents."
Emery coldly told Mark,
"Your parents have disowned you, haven't they? I also want to sever ties with you as soon as possible through divorce."
Disowned by his own parents and abandoned by his wife, Mark finally conceded to the divorce. Regarding custody, although Mark said,
"I want the custody,"
Emery countered.
"I want the custody."
Emery countered,
"You've never even changed a diaper. What are you talking about?"
Naturally, Emery was granted custody. Mark ended up paying child support in a lump sum, and the divorce was finalized. Initially, Mark wanted to pay child support in installments, but Emery insisted on a lump sum, not trusting him, so Mark reluctantly agreed. This left Mark almost broke, leading to a life of poverty after paying child support in one go. Thinking that remarrying Emery would bring back the child support, Mark began frequently demanding to remarry.
"Emery, I'm really sorry. I won't blame you anymore. I can even tolerate a bit of mess and change diapers occasionally.
Let's remarry, Mark said ridiculously, but Emery replied,
You still don't understand what you did wrong. I don't see any willingness to cooperate. Anyway, even if you changed now, I would never remarry you.
Mark still hadn't grasped the concept of cooperating on childcare and housework as a couple, continuing to make irrelevant remarks. Emery said,
Since I've already received the child support, there's no need for us to communicate anymore.
I'm blocking you.
Goodbye.
And blocked Mark. Both I and Mark's parents also blocked him. Emery expressed relief.
I feel so refreshed. It's a liberating feeling.
Later, when Mark found it difficult to pay his apartment rent and return to his parents' home, he discovered it was for sale. Standing in front of the now empty lot, he muttered,
You've got to be kidding. Did Dad and Mom sell the house too?
Having lost his home, Mark was at a loss and reluctantly returned to his apartment, leading a lonely and impoverished life. Soon, whispers and rumors about him began to spread among the neighbors. The word was that he had driven away his wife and child with his selfish behavior, and even his own parents had disowned him. Since Emery was well liked by the neighbors, they looked down on Mark, saying,
To treat such a wonderful DIL so terribly.
Even going to the convenience store near his house became a challenge for Mark, as he was conscious of people's stares, resorting to sneaking out late at night. Moreover, news of Mark's misconduct had spread at his workplace, resulting in cold treatment from everyone. Mark had a tendency to arrogantly believe everything he read online, and he wasn't very popular at work to begin with. This incident further lowered Mark's standing at work, and he was even lectured directly by a senior female colleague with experience in child rearing. As a result, Mark found no peace either at work or home, leading a life of discomfort. Stress led him to gambling, starting with a casual visit to a pachinko parlor, eventually spiraling into a life of debt. His gambling addiction led to a nocturnal lifestyle, resulting in unauthorized absences and napping during work hours, until he was finally fired. Evicted from his apartment, Mark was forced to move to a cheap, run-down property. Unable to secure stable employment, he scraped by with day labor. His gambling continued unabated, and his debt only grew larger. Despite everything, Mark never considered his own actions to blame, ranting into the night.
Why do I have to suffer like this? Damn it all!
His loud complaints resulted in complaints from neighbors and even attention from the police, showing no sign of redemption. Meanwhile, I thoroughly enjoy living with Emery and my grandson, occasionally having tea with Mark's parents, maintaining a good relationship. Mark's parents moved about 30 minutes away by car, and have completely cut ties with him, determined never to help him again, no matter what. They have no intention of telling him their new address. My grandson is soon turning 1. We plan to celebrate his first birthday grandly with Emery and Mark's parents. Though he lacks a father, Emery, I, and all of us together plan to give him all the love we can. Emery has grown stronger both as a mother and as a woman, currently in the midst of job hunting. She's more vibrant and radiant than ever. I look forward to supporting Emery and witnessing my grandson's growth. Pack my stuff too and make sure you handle it with care. Naturally, I'll be taking the biggest room, Vincent declared as the moving day to our new home approached. My husband Kendrick and I were busy with preparations for the move. It was during this time that Vincent, Kendrick's unemployed brother who lives with us, insisted we pack and transport his belongings as well. That house is perfect for someone elite like me, so I'll be coming along, he added. My name is Rachel, a 29-year-old working mother with a job in medical administration. Kendrick, also 29, is a salaried employee. Despite our busy schedules, we manage to divide household chores. I take care of meals and laundry, while Kendrick handles cleaning. We enjoy a close relationship, spending our weekends traveling and leading a fulfilling life together. One day, Kendrick received a call from his friend Tariq. "I've decided to start a new company. You were interested in this industry, right? After giving it some thought, I realized I need your skills. Please, join me in this venture," Tariq passionately pitched. After some contemplation, considering Kendrick had shown interest in this field before his current job, I encouraged him to accept Tariq's offer, which he did. Tariq lives in a location far from where we currently reside, prompting us to decide on moving to work together. Tariq's father, a successful businessman, caught wind of our situation and generously offered to prepare a home for Kendrick and me. The house, with its trendy design and sophisticated interior, excited both of us. 2 months before the move, we received a call from Kendrick's mother, Cordelia, about his father, Taylor, who had been hospitalized following an accident. It seems Taylor will have lasting effects from his injuries and will need to move into a care facility, but there's no immediate availability. He can be admitted by the end of next month, so could you help support Taylor until then? Not long ago, Taylor was involved in an accident and had been living in the hospital. While his life wasn't in danger, he was left with aftereffects that made walking difficult without a cane or assistance. We were planning to hire a home health aide, but since they wouldn't be available 24/7, there was a desire to have more hands on deck. Despite hearing that living together for caregiving often leads to trouble, my relationship with my in-laws has always been very positive, without any issues. They've even given me gifts from their travels and celebrated my birthday, showing their care for me regularly. So, we happily agreed to Cordelia's request to move in and assist with Taylor's care until our move. Cordelia then whispered something difficult to say. "Thank you. But there's one thing I need you to promise." Hearing this promise left me in shock. Since moving in with the in-laws, our relationship remained as good as ever, except for one thing: Vincent, Kendrick's brother, who was always a source of concern. Vincent, 2 years Kendrick's senior, was notably gifted, easily gaining admission to a prestigious university. Afterward, he secured a position at a well-known, leading corporation, but reportedly quit soon due to an inability to mesh with the workplace culture. For a time, he seemed keen on re-employment, but lately, he dismisses job opportunities, scoffing, "An elite like me shouldn't settle for such conditions." Currently, he sporadically works part-time jobs for leisure money while residing at his parents' home. Despite efforts to encourage his departure, Vincent's imposing nature often led to confrontations. Even after changing the locks, he would ambush the in-laws, forcefully enter the house, and replicate the keys to maintain his presence without concern. Living with someone like that, I knew wouldn't be easy, and indeed it was as I feared. In Vincent's eyes, Kendrick was the failure of a brother, and I was the incompetent DIL brought by the failure. Despite prior discussions about cohabiting for Taylor's care, Vincent demanded, "Hey Rachel, I'm starving. Isn't dinner ready yet? Why am I having fish? I was in the mood for meat today, you incompetent woman. The room's getting messy, clean it up. And don't touch the stuff on the shelves," making me handle nearly all his personal needs. Of course, I ignored most of Vincent's demands, but he would still consume meals prepared for Taylor or leave his trash in front of my room as he pleased. Even reluctantly caring for Vincent elicited no thanks, only a sense of entitlement. After returning from work on weekdays, I'd start on household chores and assist with Taylor's care, making for hectic days. Moreover, Vincent treated me like a servant, repeatedly boasting about his university and corporate experiences, taking up my time. I considered leaving multiple times, but convinced myself to endure it just for the 2 months until we moved to our new home. Since our stay was temporary, we hadn't unpacked much, simplifying the moving process. Now, we just awaited the completion of our house to transfer our belongings. One day, Vincent woke up past noon as usual, looked at the leftover lunch, and sneered at the poor meal before mockingly laughing at us. "Hey, incompetent woman, make sure my stuff is moved into the biggest room. Handle it carefully, don't you dare scratch anything." "When are you moving, Vincent?" "Let me know the address, and I'll arrange the movers for you," I replied. At that, Vincent sighed deeply, berating me for a while for being useless and stupid. Then, he started accusing Kendrick of snooping through his computer and emails. "That house seems decent enough, though living there is the true test. The location and layout seem good. Plus, with a supermarket nearby, Rachel can quickly get anything I need," he noted after apparently reviewing our new home's details, asserting his move with us. "Of course, an elite like me will take the largest room," he sneered, prompting me to bite back a retort, but I held back. Smiling, I simply agreed and ended the conversation with Vincent. Behind me, Vincent's delusions about the new home continued, envisioning a scenario where he, the non-contributor, was supported by Kendrick and me working tirelessly from dawn to dusk. That night, I shared Vincent's behavior with Kendrick, Cordelia, and Taylor. "Rachel, do you remember the promise?" Cordelia asked. "Yes, of course. I've told Vincent we would pack his things," I replied, nodding solemnly to Cordelia, who then sighed deeply. On moving day, thanks to thorough preparation, our transition to the new home went smoothly without any hitches. With Tarek's help, we were able to finish unpacking earlier than planned on the day of the move. The fresh scent of the new construction, combined with the sophisticated design of the exterior, entrance, and the functional storage spaces throughout the rooms, made us truly feel the start of our new life, lifting our spirits. That night, Kendrick, Tarek, and I celebrated our new home and the future of our company, opening the champagne Tarek brought, and enjoyed ourselves until late into the night. The next morning, in our new home, I received a call from Vincent. Answering the phone with my head still foggy from the alcohol, Vincent angrily demanded, "Hey, what's the meaning of this? Why are my things still here?" Kendrick quickly took the phone from me and calmly explained, "We did exactly as you asked, placing your belongings in the largest room. Isn't that what you wanted?" Indeed, we did place Vincent's belongings in the largest room, just as he had instructed us to. That room was the living room of the family home where we had all lived together. Vincent, having been lied to about the moving day, went out as usual and returned in the morning to find the house empty. He was utterly confused, unable to grasp the situation. Interrupting his tirade of insults, Kendrick firmly informed him of the future of their parents' house. "Also, Vincent, you need to leave soon. Dad sold the house during the move, so you can't live there anymore." Vincent, stunned, began loudly calling for Taylor and Cordelia. However, Taylor had already moved into a care facility, and Cordelia had started living alone in a small apartment nearby, so no one was there. "Are you kidding me? Leaving me behind and doing whatever you please? You're the one joking, Vincent. Thinking you can just show up at your brother's place and have everyone take care of you is insane." Kendrick, having lost all admiration for Vincent, who was once considered elite, ended the call with a sigh, showing his frustration. He rejected all return calls and even blocked Vincent's number, finally freeing us from his burden. A week after moving, I received a call from a friend living near our old family home and took the opportunity to inquire about Vincent's current situation. Vincent, it seems, had refused to leave the family home, believing it impossible to sell a house with someone still living in it. The real estate company, brought in by Taylor to handle the sale, found itself at a loss with Vincent and issued eviction notices from both Taylor and the company. Only after such measures did Vincent finally accept the sale was real. He attempted to cancel the sale, but since the property belonged to Taylor, Vincent's protests were in vain, leading to repeated eviction notices from the real estate company, almost reaching a legal standoff before Vincent reluctantly left the house. Vincent, relying on an address he found snooping on Kendrick's computer, attempted to come to our new home but was shocked to find himself at a police station. Kendrick had anticipated Vincent might look through his computer and deliberately placed false information where it would easily be found. By not locking the computer, to avoid Vincent possibly destroying it, Kendrick left the nearest police station's address, along with some interior photos from a remodeling company, tricking Vincent completely. Vincent then headed to the care facility where Taylor was residing, but faced with the reality that Taylor, now a resident, couldn't possibly take care of him. Vincent was declared estranged face-to-face. With no way to reach Cordelia, Vincent was left in despair and began living in a cheap apartment. Initially hanging out with friends, Vincent was forced to start working part-time jobs as he now had to pay his rent and utility bills. His educational background and corporate experience quickly landed him jobs. But his discriminatory attitude and pride in his elite status didn't change, leading to swift resignations from each new job. Eventually, interviewers turned away from Vincent due to his extensive history of short-lived jobs, seeing him as problematic. Vincent finally realized that his prized educational background and corporate experience were of no value. When we met by chance at a supermarket, Vincent appeared thin and worn, struggling even for food, his clothes tattered. Upon seeing me, Vincent desperately clung to me, and I conveyed Cordelia's directive. We were told by Cordelia not to provide any assistance to you, Vincent. You're no longer considered a son, and even if you struggle with money or need food, we were asked not to help. Hearing this, Vincent collapsed to his knees. Before cohabiting, Cordelia had warned us about Vincent's unemployed status and arrogant behavior at home. Cordelia had hoped that seeing Kendrick's positive approach to his new venture might spark some competitiveness in Vincent. Resolved to disown Vincent if this attempt failed, the in-laws were prepared to cut ties with him during this move. We had intended to support Vincent towards independence, but that resolve shattered when we were treated as failures and incompetent from day one. Realizing he was truly abandoned by his entire family, Vincent broke down, begging me for money or food. I reiterated Cordelia's words, shook Vincent off, and drove away. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Vincent remained huddled and motionless. With a sigh, I thought of it as divine retribution for neglecting the in-laws who were willing to support him, and took a slightly longer route home. As for my husband and me, with Vincent gone, we were freed from the stress of being treated like servants and have been enjoying our new life in this new land. Kendrick and Tarek's company, though initially faced challenges during setup, gradually gained trust from those around us and is doing well. Kendrick, despite being busy, is happy working in the industry he loves alongside Tarek, which makes me happy as well. As the company is on track and expecting to get busier, I've decided to work part-time there to support Kendrick's endeavor. We keep in touch with the in-laws, occasionally visiting them for meals, maintaining a good relationship. We vowed to live each day without arrogance, grateful for the support from those around us, no matter how busy or difficult our situation may be. I am grateful to Kendrick, and Kendrick is grateful to me as we happily live our daily lives. I found a new wife, so let's get a divorce, he said, handing me the divorce papers out of nowhere. What kind of way to say it is that? I replied to Christian, visibly upset.
What do you mean? Explain yourself properly.
There's nothing much to explain. You're in a wheelchair, right? That means I have to take care of you. I don't want that. So, divorce it is.
Shalia, help me. What should I do now?
Christian was nearly hysterical, his words hard to make out. His distress was far from normal. Who are you? I responded calmly.
Who? It's me, Christian.
At first, I didn't recognize him because of his drastic change, but hearing his voice made it clear. Pretending not to know him, Christian seemed quite panicked. My name is Shalia, a 46-year-old homemaker. I have a daughter, Lissa, who's 21. I live with my husband Christian, who's 4 years older, and our daughter. After finishing junior college, I got a job at a construction company. Christian, who was in sales for construction equipment, frequented my company. I was impressed by his diligent salesmanship and took a liking to him. Christian was always very energetic and had a loud voice, and although he sometimes got confused and looked at me with disdain, he left a good impression on me. When he asked me out, I quickly said yes. After several dates, we got married. Our daughter Lissa has already received a job offer. She's set to work at a financial institution starting this spring. Since it's within commuting distance from home, the three of us will continue to live together for a while. With her thesis submitted, Lissa is enjoying her last moments of student life. I felt relieved that I was finally getting a break from parenting. However, our family life hasn't been smooth sailing. Christian has damaged his liver from years of unhealthy living. He can't enjoy his favorite drinks and is on a restricted diet. Although working wasn't a problem for him, his frequent hospital visits led to many absences and lateness at work. His physical strength has significantly declined, forcing him to switch from a sales to an office position. Despite my concerns for Christian, I was overall happy. Your liver function has improved significantly. Let's continue living as usual. Recently, the hospital's test results were good. And Christian showed a smile I hadn't seen in a long time.
Thank you. Does that mean I can live a normal life now?
The doctor responded with a smile.
Yes, that's right. This is thanks to your regular diet. Your wife has done a great job.
I was so happy I could barely keep a smile off my face. Despite never receiving a single word of thanks from Christian, I was on the verge of tears, holding back with a handkerchief. The doctor's acknowledgement of my efforts was incredibly gratifying and appreciated. Christian frowned in displeasure.
Doctor, what are you saying? It's because I've been taking my medicine and taking care of myself, right?
It seemed Christian wasn't pleased with me being praised. He complained like a child who had his credit stolen. Hearing Christian's comment deflated my happy feeling.
Of course, medicine is important. But the most crucial thing for your condition is your diet. You are where you are today because of your wife. You can't thank her enough.
The doctor advised Christian in an instructive tone. But it seemed Christian wasn't receptive to the doctor's words. He didn't even try to hide his displeasure. So, I quickly wrapped up. Thank you. The conversation. Back at home, Christian called his parents to share the good news. He sounded very happy then. Christian always plays the victim, unable to bear not being the center of attention. Though his illness may play a part, I thought of him as a small-minded man. Everyone at work was so pleased. They said it's because of my good deeds. You two are nothing like that. Christian came home in high spirits. Taking such flattery seriously and looking down on me and Lissa seemed truly low to me. As I was about to retort, Christian blurted out something unbelievable.
They're going to throw me a recovery celebration. I can finally drink again.
I doubted Christian's words.
A recovery celebration? You're not fully healed. How did you explain it to everyone?
Christian looked perplexed, as if he didn't understand his own situation. How? The doctor said it's okay to live a normal life, didn't he?
The normal the doctor mentioned is your version of normal, not the same as a healthy person's normal. He said to continue living as you have been.
Christian suddenly looked annoyed.
Let's not sweat the small stuff. I know myself better than anyone. I'll be fine for a day.
Indeed, Christian had been abstaining from his beloved alcohol for a long time. Then there were the recent test results. I couldn't say I didn't understand Christian's desire to drink. I was worried but decided to give in. All right. Take care. Just make sure not to eat anything high in salt and limit yourself to just a sip of alcohol for the toast. Christian must have felt victorious, showing a smile I had never seen before.
Can I really go? Thank you.
Just remember your promise.
Yeah, I got it.
Christian wasn't really listening to me. It was uncertain how much of what I said would be adhered to. Filled with anxiety, Christian ended up going to the party. That night, Christian came home in high spirits, drunk enough to need a cab ride home from a junior colleague. I thought all the effort until now had gone to waste with such heavy alcohol consumption. Afterward, Christian started attending drinking parties once a week. He didn't consult me at all. He just went on his own. Christian then started making me even more anxious. While eating dinner, Christian began to complain about the restricted diet.
This is a bit bland, isn't it? It's so tasteless, I don't feel like I'm eating anything.
Until now, he had never complained and even said it was delicious. His taste must have adapted to the strongly flavored food he ate at the drinking parties. At one point, Christian even brought home side dishes from a convenience store that seemed like snacks for drinking. He must have convinced himself he was cured, as others thought he was. I was overwhelmed with anxiety. This surely wasn't going to end well. I tried to warn Christian, but it was like talking to a wall.
The last results were good, so it'll be fine.
All I could do was sigh and hold my temples. Christian's condition didn't last long. One night, he rushed to the emergency room with severe abdominal pain and fever. The doctor's words were gravely serious.
Mr. Christian, you have cirrhosis of the liver, and it's quite advanced. You were continuing with the medication and diet therapy, right?
I took the medication. The diet, well. Christian awkwardly looked down. Both the doctor and I were at a loss for words. In my heart, I murmured,
"It's your own fault."
The doctor must have felt the same.
At this point, all we can do is slow the progression and alleviate the symptoms. You also need to be careful of pancreatic cancer. Cancer! That can't be! Doctor, isn't there anything you can do? There must be another treatment option.
Christian clung to the doctor, tears streaming down his face, begging for a solution.
It's not that there aren't options, but... Please, what is it? What's the option? It's a transplant. A living donor liver transplant. There you go, there's a treatment option. Please, go ahead with the transplant.
It's not as simple as that. First, we need to find a donor.
Then, here. I have one right here.
Christian grabbed my arm.
A transplant can't proceed without the donor's voluntary consent.
I wanted Christian to be healthy. But honestly, I was scared. I couldn't immediately agree on the spot. On the other hand, Christian's eyes were shining. When do we do the tests? Sooner is better, right? Christian was already set on receiving the transplant surgery. My feelings were of no concern to him. After much thought, I decided to undergo the tests to become a donor. I was a match as a donor. Then, the surgery happened in no time. The operation was over more quickly than I had anticipated. Both Christian and I had successful surgeries. I was hospitalized for 3 weeks, and during my stay, Lisa came to the hospital and took care of me. Afterwards, she continued to visit the hospital to take care of Christian. Christian spent a few days in the ICU before being moved to a general ward, and after 3 months, he was discharged. His prognosis was good, with no complications, rejection, or signs of infection, and he was recovering smoothly. A year later, Christian returned to society and started going to the office again. He looked healthier, more vibrant, and energetic than before. I truly thought it was good that we went through with the transplant. However, my condition then started to worsen. I began to cough, experience shortness of breath and dizziness, and often couldn't stand up. Thinking it was a consequence of the surgery, I had it checked during a regular checkup, but nothing abnormal was found. After visiting various hospitals, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. Despite not smoking, I learned that lung cancer can still occur. Lung cancer doesn't have specific symptoms, which is why it was undiagnosed. Fortunately, my cancer was caught early, so I could be treated with chemotherapy and radiation. The dizziness persisted, and I had difficulty standing, leading to a wheelchair-bound life. It was then, as our roles reversed, that a serious situation occurred. Christian didn't come home one night, and I was worried something had happened, but Lisa handed me her smartphone. On the screen was a photo of Christian happily drinking at a pub with his coworkers. "This was 10 minutes ago," Lisa said with a look of disbelief. I was flabbergasted. Despite having had a liver transplant just a year ago, it seemed Christian had no awareness of being ill. How much trouble he had caused the family due to this lack of awareness. I worried for nothing. Let's just go to sleep. However, Christian didn't come home that day. He didn't return the next morning either, so I called his smartphone. He didn't answer but sent a message instead. The message said he had left divorce papers in the bedroom for me to file. Shocked, I dropped the smartphone to the floor. I called Lisa loudly and asked her to check Christian's bedroom. Lisa came down looking pale.
"Mom, this,"
she said, holding a piece of paper. Taking it, I gasped.
"What's this?"
I was filled with disbelief. The paper was a filled-out divorce application.
"Unbelievable! What kind of person does this?"
Lisa, possibly out of frustration, was red-faced and teary-eyed. I, on the other hand, had become calm. I felt more resignation than anger or sadness. Then, my smartphone rang. It was from Christian. Taking a deep breath, I answered. As soon as he heard my voice, Christian began speaking cheerfully. "I've found a new wife, so we're getting a divorce, LOL." Handing me divorce papers out of the blue, what a way to say it. I replied to Christian, clearly upset.
"What do you mean? Explain yourself properly."
"There's not much to explain. You're in a wheelchair, right? That means I have to take care of you. I don't want that. So, divorce it is." I felt like everything went dark in front of me. It was more of a feeling of disgust and pity than shock. Lisa snatched the smartphone from me and yelled at Christian.
"What do you mean her? Are you even human?"
I was still in disbelief. However, I didn't feel sad or hurt. Christian's selfish behavior over time had probably numbed my feelings for him. There was a sense of liberation in me. The regrettable part was that Christian never had any feelings of gratitude or respect for our family. Seeing Lisa looking at me worriedly, I smiled at her. "I'll be fine. I've been over him for a while. It's infuriating, though." Still, I was anxious. With my condition, working wouldn't be easy. Of course, I would ensure to get adequate compensation in the divorce settlement. But that alone might not be enough. Given the circumstances, I resolved to focus on what I could do moving forward. We have to make sure to get enough compensation from the divorce settlement to not struggle with living expenses. I renewed my determination, clenching my fists tightly.
He's got a healthy body now, so we should get what we're entitled to,
I said to Lissa, who nodded vigorously in agreement. That's right, I'm not alone. I have my lovely and dependable daughter, Lissa, by my side. 3 months after Christian left the house, an unbelievable situation occurred. I had just returned home from a hospital visit and was about to open the front door with Lissa's support when someone jumped out from a hiding spot.
Shalia, help me! What should I do now?
Christian was nearly hysterical, his words hard to make out. His distress was far from normal.
Who are you?
I responded calmly.
Who? It's me, Christian.
At first, I didn't recognize him because of his drastic change, but his voice made it clear. The words I had just spoken were deliberate. I opened the door. Now able to move without a wheelchair as my condition had improved. It would be a nuisance to have someone continue to kneel at the entrance, so I reluctantly let Christian into the house. In the living room, Lissa and I confronted Christian.
What are you doing here?
Christian began to speak, his forehead rubbing against the table.
Please, I was wrong. I want us to get back together. Ha! The nerve you have to say that now.
Lissa said before I could, echoing my thoughts. He had so easily discarded me just because he got healthy. And he had said he didn't want to take care of me. What does he want now?
Just leave, please.
Lissa, unable to bear it any longer, grabbed Christian's arm to make him stand up and leave. When Christian attempted to rise, he suddenly clutched his stomach and collapsed in pain. Despite how I felt about Christian, I couldn't just ignore someone in pain. I asked Lissa to bring the car around, and we took Christian to his regular hospital. In the car, Christian was sweating and groaning, holding his stomach. Upon arrival, I quickly called for a nurse, who then took him to the treatment room. While waiting in the lobby, a nurse called me into the treatment room. Christian's doctor was there and began to explain his condition.
Ma'am, you've just arrived, I see.
The doctor seemed unaware of my relationship with Christian. There was no point in discussing that now, so I listened to the doctor's explanation. What's his condition? The doctor spoke gravely.
As I've explained to him before, there's a strong rejection reaction to the transplanted liver. Immediate hospitalization and treatment are necessary.
Lissa chuckled softly in the background.
He's getting what he deserves.
I coughed to signal disapproval of Lissa's inappropriate comment. But I completely agreed. The doctor pretended not to hear and continued.
We need to switch to a stronger immunosuppressant. This medication puts a significant strain on the kidneys. His kidney values are already poor, so using this suppressant will necessitate dialysis.
I responded immediately.
I see. Please do what you think is best.
The doctor seemed taken aback by my quick response. Starting dialysis means being bedridden in the hospital for about 3 hours, 3 times a week. Once it begins, it's a lifelong commitment, significantly impacting one's lifestyle. Normally, one wouldn't make such a decision so quickly. But I have no involvement in Christian's life anymore. What happens to him is none of my concern. The doctor began to discuss the possibility of transplantation. It dawned on me why Christian had come. He was probably hoping for a kidney transplant from me. Seeking help from me because his condition had worsened was far too convenient. Christian should suffer the complications of liver disease and live the rest of his life on dialysis. When Lissa was out, Christian came to our house again. This time, it seems he properly rang the intercom. He was so emaciated that saying he looked haggard would be an understatement. His face was lifeless and pallid, as if he might collapse at any moment. Although I had an idea why Christian had come, I let him into the house anyway. He must have sneaked out of the hospital. Then Christian began to talk incessantly about the woman he was involved with. She was a 24-year-old coworker. She's 3 months pregnant. Christian revealed shortly after leaving our home that the pregnancy was discovered. I thought I had no feelings left for Christian, but his manner of sharing this news made me feel disgusted by him.
Anyway, I've decided to go ahead and file those divorce papers we put on hold. But since I have my own life to live, you'll need to pay me a lump sum of $50,000 for the settlement,
I stated firmly. It's a bit above the going rate, but considering my illness, it shouldn't be considered too high.
There's no way I can pay that,
Christian retorted, his face turning red with anger. Ignoring Christian's attitude, I continued.
If she's someone from work, she must have known you were married. I'll also be seeking compensation from your mistress in the divorce settlement. Hey, cut the crap. Do you even know who she is?
I had no idea who she was.
She's the boss's daughter. And she thinks I've been divorced for years,
Christian admitted, attempting to justify his deception. I was appalled by his selfishness.
That's your problem. You've done enough. If you don't pay, I'll go to your company and have your wages garnished,
I said sharply.
Please, don't. If the boss finds out about the affair, it'll be a big problem,
I thought to myself.
It's already a big problem, isn't it?
Staring Christian down, he timidly began to speak with a pale face. I'll figure out the money somehow. Just please don't tell the company. If the company finds out, she'll know I'm still married. It'd be cruel to her if she found out about the marriage from an affair. Sympathizing with his mistress? What about me? Christian looked taken aback. Then hung his head. I'll arrange the money right away. Just keep quiet about it. I kept my stern gaze on him. Christian knelt on the floor, begging.
Please, keep this quiet.
I couldn't help but laugh at Christian's pitiful state. Christian explained he would borrow the $50,000 settlement from his parents and the mistress's settlement from a loan shark. As long as it didn't inconvenience me, I didn't care where the money came from, but I made sure he understood it needed to be transferred properly. We agreed he would file the divorce papers after transferring the settlement, and I made sure to get it in writing. Christian left dejectedly. He probably came to talk about a kidney transplant. But I didn't let him get to that point. By exploiting Christian's vulnerability, I managed to settle the divorce compensation without further issues. I was glad Lissa wasn't home. Witness such a mess. Being still legally his wife, I went to Christian's hospital to sign all the treatment consent forms, including for dialysis. I decided to check on Christian and found him and a young woman arguing in the common room. The woman seemed very angry. Their loud voices could be heard outside.
Weren't you supposed to be cured? What's with the hospitalization?
This must be Dina, the mistress.
Please, calm down,
Christian replied weakly.
I don't want to deal with an old man in the hospital when I'm about to have a baby.
Such a foul-mouthed woman. I wondered if she really was the boss's daughter. As Lissa eyed her suspiciously. I think I know her, Lissa muttered. Dina continued to rant at Christian.
I absolutely can't handle caregiving.
Christian shrank away, overwhelmed and unable to argue.
And what's this about divorce compensation?
Lissa looked at me and laughed. I just couldn't help myself and sent a letter about the affair to the company president. Perhaps that's why Dina came storming in.
It's practically marriage fraud. He lied about being healthy. I'm the one who should be getting the divorce compensation.
I couldn't help but laugh at her words. Liss's letter might have been too much, but it was a case of reaping what one sows. A young doctor passing by struck up a conversation with Lissa. "Is that your dad in the common room?" There seemed to be a familiarity in his tone. Lissa responded with a smile. "Maybe not." I watched their exchange with a touch of amusement. After the doctor left, Lissa looked happily at me, catching my gaze and blushing slightly. Then, a nurse mentioned to me that there was laundry piling up. With a smile, I responded,
"Understood,"
and left, pondering that Christian likely had no one to care for him during his hospital stay. On the way back from the hospital, "I might know that woman, his mistress," Lissa mentioned. "Probably a senior from high school," she speculated, recalling a senior who left school halfway through her senior year due to pregnancy. "She must have dropped out because she was pregnant," Lissa mused, tilting her head in thought. She then suggested, "Maybe the child she's carrying isn't Dad's." Lissa shared rumors that the senior had been involved in dubious activities back then. I had a hunch that the father might be someone else. Just a woman's intuition. But it felt likely. It's that intuition they say women have. After some time, the alimony from the divorce trial was paid by my in-laws. And they didn't just transfer it, they brought it in person. They said, "We've been so troubled by what our son has done, truly sorry." As my in-laws apologized, tears in their eyes, kneeling on the floor. "I will accept the alimony from the divorce trial for my sake, but I intend to have no further dealings with my son, Christian," was their stance. Christian had angered the CEO and was fired on the spot. Though Christian received severance pay, it was taken by his affair partner under the guise of alimony for the divorce trial, and after that, he went missing. My mother-in-law tearfully shared this with me. Christian has been hospitalized ever since. Due to artificial dialysis and worsening liver conditions, it seems unlikely Christian will be able to leave the hospital in the future. The alimony from the divorce trial was transferred from the company Christian worked for, probably out of shame for their daughter's scandal. It might be a form of hush money, I guess. The divorce turmoil has settled down. After a long while, peaceful days have returned to me. My lung cancer responded well to treatment, and I was recently informed by the doctor that I'm in remission. Now, regular checkups should suffice. Lissa is off to work. Right now, I'm alone at home. Looking around the empty house, this house originally belonged to my relatives. It was renovated and transferred to my name. The renovation costs came from my savings before I got married. This house is my possession. So, even after the divorce, I won't have trouble finding a place to live. As for Lissa, she recently reported that she's dating a young doctor. During her frequent hospital visits, she received advice from the doctor, and they became close. He was a kind, smiling doctor with a friendly demeanor. She plans to bring him home soon. I don't want Lissa to make the same mistakes I did. But with that doctor, she should be fine. I've lost a lot due to my illness. My marriage was a failure, too. But life still has so much more to offer. And then, the CEO of the company Christian worked for offered me a job. It must have been his way of making amends. It was an office job at a local construction company. They valued my previous work experience at another construction company. Since they said I could work from home, I accepted the offer. Having a stable income greatly reduced my anxiety about the future. I am going to be happier from now on. I don't just want to regret the past, I aim to live looking forward.
Don't think I'm grateful just because you paid that much money.
Tina, who is my son Philip's wife, was suffering from a rare disease. So I had paid $28,000 for her treatment, draining all my savings, unable to bear seeing her in pain. However, it was how they treated me.
Aren't we family? If so, you're supposed to do this much, right?
As Philip hurled these words,
Exactly. But once you get the money, you're useless. Got it? You're an eyesore, so don't bother us anymore.
Even Tina uttered such harsh words. Who do they think I'm paying this money for? It's hard to believe that someone in need of surgery and suffering from illness could act like this. Afterward, when Tina's primary doctor disclosed something to me, I decided to take my revenge. My name is Helen. Now in my mid-50s, life seems to be on the downhill. I was dedicated to my work in my youth. Before I knew it, I was approaching 40 and still single. Then, during a mistake at work, Alexander, who would later become my husband, helped me out.
Thank you. You saved me. I don't know what I would have done without you.
I was truly grateful to him. That incident brought us closer, and we eventually started dating. It was a late-blooming romance. We would go out for meals after work, or I'd cook at his place on our days off. As lost his wife, he lived with his middle school son, Philip. Whenever I visited, Philip clearly showed his dislike for me. I casually Alexander asked, "Hey, do you think Philip dislikes me? He seems to obviously avoid me." "It's just his age, I guess. I went through that phase too. He'll come around." He didn't seem to take it too seriously. "I need you, and Philip needs a mother. If it's okay with you, would you marry me?" And then, he proposed to me. I had resigned myself to being single for life, but the idea of living the rest of my days as Alexander's wife and mother to his son didn't seem bad, so I accepted his proposal. Thus, my life in Alexander's home began. Having lost my parents and having no siblings, perhaps I longed for a family. I was truly happy to have my own family. Yet, Philip stubbornly avoided me.
Good morning.
Even when I greeted him in the morning, yeah. That was all he would say. Still, I believed that he would eventually open up to me. Philip would retreat to his room after meals and we hardly talked. Alexander didn't say much about it either. I didn't understand the dynamics of a father and son, but it seemed Alexander saw a bit of his younger self in Philip. However, Alexander was diagnosed with cancer 2 years later and passed away, despite treatment. I felt as if my heart was being torn apart, losing my family again. Philip was still in high school. A young man with a future ahead of him. I worked harder than ever, thinking that seeing him off into society would be my way of repaying Alexander. Thanks to the assets Alexander left and the insurance money, I could support him through college. He found a job, and I thought my responsibilities were finally over. 10 years after Alexander's death, Philip, now fully independent, still didn't talk much with me, but showed no intention of leaving the house.
I've got something to talk about. Is that okay?
It was rare for him to initiate a conversation. It's rare. Or rather, it's probably the first time it's happened.
Of course. What is it?
He said he wanted to get married and asked if they could live here together.
Why hesitate? It's your house. You should live together.
I was happy. In nearly 15 years of marriage to Alexander, I don't think he and I had ever really talked. I thought he had finally grown up. Philip and his wife decided against a wedding ceremony and just submitted their marriage registration to start their cohabitation.
Nice to meet you.
The wife's name was Tina. She looked somewhat pale.
She's got a chronic illness and is frail. You'll handle all the housework.
Thanks. Was he still not accepting me as a mother?
We're relying on you,
Tina said with an untroubled smile. Leaving everything to me might be too much. It would be nice if they could help a little. From that day, I started being treated like a housemaid by the couple.
Oh, I can't eat this, so can you please not put it in front of me?
Tina always had something to complain about the meals I prepared. I'm sorry. Do you have dietary restrictions due to your illness? I'll be more careful next time, please forgive me. I wasn't sure how to interact with her. She needs to regularly visit the hospital because of her condition. Be considerate, will you? I understood that she had a chronic illness requiring regular hospital visits. Indeed, she seemed to be spending entire days at the hospital about 3 times a week. I was working full-time, so I didn't know much about their daytime activities, but I could fully appreciate that it must be tough. Still, I wondered what illness she had. Even with these questions, I continued living with them. Make sure you clean our room too. I'm tired, so at least ready a supper for me. Seriously, you're so inconsiderate. Philip would say, then Tina would assertively add, I get dizzy and feel like I might collapse if I move too much, so I'll leave all the cooking and laundry to you. While in this house, I felt like I was their maid. A month after we started living together, Philip revealed Tina's illness during a conversation. Can I talk to you about something? He approached me uncharacteristically humbly. Apparently, Tina had a kidney problem and was undergoing dialysis 3 times a week at the hospital. Each session cost about $300, totaling around $4,000 per month and approximately $48,000 a year. A staggering amount. She's on a waiting list for a transplant, but that's going to cost money too. Can we figure something out? He continued, looking serious. How much will it cost? I asked. Between $28,000 and $30,000, I guess. If she gets the surgery, she won't need weekly hospital visits anymore, and we won't have to spend more. Please help us. I had never been asked for something so earnestly before. Okay. I'll give it. Nothing is more important than life. Tina's attitude seemed more understandable, considering she was battling a serious illness. They had already incurred a significant amount of debt for medical expenses. To protect the future of these 2 young people, I promised to pay. Here's $28,000. Use it wisely. I withdrew the money from the bank and handed the envelope to Philip. Thank you. I feel bad about this. I was a bit concerned about his reaction upon receiving the money, but I assumed it was just the stress of handling such a large sum. However, the next day,
You think we're grateful just because you paid? You think we're family, right? Then it's only natural for you to pay.
Philip hurled these words at me.
Once we get the money, you're useless to us. Can you stay out of our lives for good?
Tina continued, her face pale.
Honestly, can you leave our house soon? I've been tolerating you so far, but you're just an eyesore.
I couldn't believe these unexpected words from Philip. Was I the only one who thought we could become a family? Unable to bear the sadness and frustration, I packed my things and left the house. Having impulsively left the house, I had nowhere to go, as I had no other relatives. For the time being, I needed to find a place to stay. I decided to stay at a budget hotel near my office and think about my future. I had thought of Philip and Tina as family and wanted to be a real family. That's why I listened to Tina's story about her struggle with a serious illness and decided to pay for the surgery. I was carried away by emotion and handed over a large sum of money, but when and where would the surgery take place? Was it even confirmed? I often heard about waiting lists for transplant surgeries, but wasn't that usually for hearts or something similar? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I hadn't been informed about any crucial details. I decided to inquire about Tina at the hospital where she was supposedly receiving dialysis.
I'm sorry, but due to privacy concerns, we can't disclose information about our patients. Are you a family member?
The word family stung my heart.
Yes, she's my son's wife who lives with us, and she always seems unwell. I'm worried and keep asking, but she tells me nothing.
Even though I insisted, the hospital couldn't provide any more information. I contacted several other hospitals that seemed relevant, but again, patient information was not disclosed. However, I learned that dialysis treatment is indeed expensive. But there are subsidy programs available that reduce monthly costs to around $100. If that's the case, Philip's claim of being burdened by debt from treatment costs seems very dubious. Upon reflection, many questions arise. Why didn't I realize this sooner? In my eagerness to be liked by them, I had lost sight of myself. I decided to hire a private investigator to look into their backgrounds. I felt guilty for suspecting my own family, but I was concerned about the whereabouts of the $28,000 I had given them. If it truly went towards surgery costs, that was fine. But if they treated me as a nuisance, I could write it off as severance money. I searched online for a detective agency and visited their office. The private investigator listened intently to my story. So, you want to know if your son's wife is really undergoing treatment? Is that it? The investigator asked. Yes. They suddenly changed their attitude and kicked me out of the house right after I gave them money for the surgery. I replied tearfully. That's terrible. Perhaps they were after your money from the start? I'll look into it, so please leave it to me. The private investigator assured me with a gentle smile. To reassure me, he answered with a gentle smile. I decided to wait for the results of the investigation, feeling anxious. It took about 2 months, but I finally got a call from the detective agency. Since it's not feasible to stay in a hotel for months, I rented a reasonably priced house nearby and started living alone. Let me start with the conclusion. Tina does not seem to be undergoing artificial dialysis treatment. Hearing that, I felt as if something that had been nagging at the back of my mind had been resolved.
So, what about her pale complexion and the hospital visits?
I asked him. It seems she does have symptoms of anemia, but nothing immediately life-threatening. What a revelation. I was speechless at his report. Does that mean everything, except her complexion, was a lie?
What about the money needed for surgery?
In response to my question, he said, it seems they just wanted money to have fun. They were borrowing from all over, you know? Looks like they took advantage of your kindness and deceived you. The shocking investigation results were reported calmly by him. Anger welled up from the depths of my heart. I was genuinely concerned, and to think Philip and Tina exploited that for their gain infuriated me. I decided to stop showing unnecessary concern. No matter how much I invested emotionally, they were ultimately someone else's children. I thought I had devoted myself for nearly 15 years, but that feeling suddenly cooled. From that day, I began plotting my revenge. Some time passed, and Philip repeatedly called my mobile phone, but I completely ignored him. Half a month later, when the time seemed right, I responded to his call as if nothing had happened. Oh? It's been a while. Has Tina's surgery been scheduled? Is she doing well? When I said that,
What the hell is going on? Since the other day, real estate agents and surveyors have been coming and going, and I thought it was strange. Then I hear this house is on the market? This is my house, isn't it? Who said you could sell it?
He was furious. His voice through the mobile phone was so loud it almost hurt my ears.
Your house?
No, it was built by Alexander. And now, I'm the owner.
You essentially evicted the landlord. I don't need to live there anymore, so I decided to sell it and buy another property. You better start looking for a new home.
As I said so, his voice grew even more furious.
How dare you? This house was built by my father, so it should be mine now that he's gone. What right do you have to claim it, coming in later?
He yelled angrily. So, you know nothing.
Well, I never told you.
I explained to him about the time Alexander passed away. When Alexander died, Philip was a teenager. Deeming him too young to manage the assets, Alexander left a will entrusting me with everything, including enough savings for Philip's college education. Take care of Philip, were Alexander's last words. I never told Philip that. I had planned to eventually transfer the land, building, and Alexander's assets to Philip, and didn't see the need to mention it. I never imagined being betrayed like this.
You could have at least pretended to get along as family, even if just in form. Then, eventually, it could have been yours.
I said with a tinge of regret. I had truly wanted a genuine parent-child bond, but that dream had ended.
Or are you planning to buy the land and house yourself? As a family sale, I might give you a discount.
I teased Philip.
It was supposed to become mine in the first place, right? Just transfer it to me already.
He replied irritably. Whether it's a gift or transfer, it's not free, you know? Understand? Driving me out was a mistake. I was determined not to back down. The $28,000 you took from me, that wasn't for surgery, was it? I had everything checked. The story about Tina needing a transplant surgery to survive, being on dialysis, all lies, right? Just to get money for yourselves. I'll never forgive you. As I declared so.
Wait, hold on. She really is frail. You have to believe that.
He started to panic. Even that is just a case of severe anemia, not immediately life-threatening. Be prepared. I will get back the money you scammed from me, I said firmly. Then he retorted,
It's all nonsense. Besides, we're family, right? There's no way this can be fraud.
Family, you say? How can you even say that? Since I married your father, not once did you seriously talk to me. Still, I tried my best to watch over you, keeping my promise to Alexander. Do you understand? I felt like crying, thinking back on everything that had happened. Just because we're family, it doesn't become a non-crime, does it? But sadly for you, I plan to sue for being deceived. Isn't that what happened? You lied and took money from me. After I finished speaking,
How could you?
He was speechless on the other end of the phone. I will consult a lawyer based on the investigation results from the detective agency. Can you discuss the rest with them? After all, you don't think of me as your mother, and I no longer think of you as my son. You're nearly 30, handle the rest yourself. With that, I hung up the phone. The dispute with Philip and Tina didn't end easily. They claimed residency rights and refused to vacate the house, so we ended up negotiating through representatives. However, their act of deceiving me and taking my money backfired, and the negotiations broke down. They were forced to move to Tina's parents' house. It seems they concocted the lie about needing money for fun and to pay off debts they had accumulated elsewhere. They based their story on Tina's chronic anemia and frequent doctor visits, eventually landing on artificial dialysis and kidney transplant after some online research. They must have thought it was dramatic enough and that someone like me could be easily fooled. Though I was at fault for not verifying the information and giving them money, taking advantage of someone's feelings to scam money is unforgivable. I realized that no matter how much you try to connect with some people, it just doesn't happen. As a result of the lawsuit, they were ordered to repay the money they took from me. Since they couldn't pay it all at once, they agreed to monthly installments. Additionally, they were ordered to compensate me for 15 years of mental anguish. I ended up buying a room of condo with the money from selling the house and land and now live there. Living alone for the first time in 15 years is quite comfortable, but sometimes I feel lonely. During those times, I think family would be nice, but I can't live with someone else now. Moved into Tina's parents' house, the couple are working to repay the money they stole from me. Tina, who claimed she was too anemic to work, is now working to pay off the compensation, pushed by her parents who reasoned that if she had enough energy to have fun, she could earn some money. As for me, I'm thinking of relying on a nursing home when I get older and can't take care of myself. Nowadays, even with close relatives, caregiving is hard. It feels more difficult with someone you're not related to by blood. Rather than being cared for with caution, I think it's easier to pay for proper care. That might be the way things are now, but it's still lonely. Those 15 years I devoted without a second thought, though ignored by Philip, now seem like a time that let me experience what family is. I don't know how many years I have left, but I want to live without regrets.